And then I say, well, how often do you use your voice? And then I say, how much vocal training have you had? And I said, so it's one of the biggest tools in your personal toolbox. It's part of how you relate to people. It's part of how you perceive.
Well, your voice is a muscle, and
Yes.
people don't think about that. You go to the gym
Yes.
to work out any other part of your body.
Exactly.
To look good, to feel good.
Yeah.
But the voice, nobody really thinks about.
A whole human life is contained in the voice. Than skin to skin. And it's also the fact that, we can close our eyes. We cannot close our ears.
Hey, I'm Lisa Hugo, and I am obsessed with helping other people find their voices so they can go out and take on the world, be seen as an authority, an expert, and grow their business by sharing that knowledge and expertise with others. Now, I studied performing arts, and I spent 20 years of my career traveling the world as a professional singer-songwriter. I teach you the secrets to speak up and be heard, overcome your fears, and then use these skills to build a business and a life that you love and that could change both your own life and the lives of others. This is your one-stop shop for all things that are going to help you to build a life on your terms. This is Impact Through Voice. Well, welcome back to the Impact Through Voice podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Hugo, and I'm in the studio today with Kim A. Page. Now, Kim is a voice and communications expert. She's in the same field of me, so I'm very excited about this conversation because it's not very often that I get to sit down with someone who understands what it is that I do. And I think it's going to be incredibly insightful for you, my listeners, to hear two voice and communications experts talking about the topic. So welcome to the podcast, Kim. I want you to sum up what it is that you do in the, let's say, 60 seconds or less.
Thank
Put
you.
the pressure on you.
Thank you. So exciting to be with you, my peer. Yes, like yourself, I help professionals access their voice, their body, and their words so that they can get the influence they're looking for. And I put my toolbox together in a method called the right kind of loud. And so the right kind of loud is knowing how to get your message through, making yourself likable, memorable, and get that impact.
And that's so important. And I think not enough people understand the importance of the voice in particular in communication. Now, we met not that long ago, but when I met you, I felt such a connection and a synergy, maybe because we both do the same thing. But when we got together and we talked, we found out we both come from a similar background. Similar but very different, right? So you also come from a performance background. Tell us a little bit about how you got into this.
So I usually say that in my 20s, it was all about expressing myself. And I was writing poetry and I studied writing and I was performing and I was singing. So it was about how to access all of those tools. And I was in a lot of quirky for example, I did Buffon physical theater. I studied a whole array of different vocal techniques. I studied first general basic voice techniques, but then I had this whole ethnic, I call it my voiceaholic years. Because in the beginning for me, the voice was about sharing a story with the audience. Like yourself, a sing-songwriter, that's what you do. You have a story, you want to share it.
Yeah.
And then I came across a Bulgarian singing workshop and I was just transported. So I ended up singing in 3 Bulgarian choirs. I sang Bulgarian for 3 years. I went to Bulgaria it's very nerdy, very nerdy.
Yeah.
And then I met this fantastic gypsy woman called Ida Kellerova. And I went to the Czech Republic and studied voice and expression and how to get your feelings into the voice. And then I heard Sanko Namchilak, who is this master overtone chanter from Mongolia. And she creates forests and landscapes and planets through her voice. It's very, very powerful.
Can you explain what overtone singing is, overtone voice?
Yes, I will. So overtone chanting, a lot of indigenous populations around the world have different versions of overtone chanting. It's very kind of like a core human sound. And when I've been teaching overtone chanting, my experience is that anybody who hears it and sings it, although they've never been experiencing this before, they feel like, oh, it's like a homecoming. It's something we recognize. It's like it's very core part of who we are. And so I studied the Tibetan version of overtone chanting. So the Tibetan monks, when they sit and they chant in their monasteries, That is overtone chanting. And then you have different versions. The didgeridoo, the Australian instrument, creates an overtone sound. So as you probably know, when we sing or speak, every bass note has a scale of overtones. La dee 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 down da da dee 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 dee. Anyone who plays a blowing instrument, my father was a French horn player.
My family were all brass instrument players.
So yes. So all your family members, they would know that when you blow so and so much stronger, they will hit the overtones. So for a wind or brass blower in the instrument world, they all know about the overtones. So when we speak and when we sing in a choir, we try to not make it sour. We intonate. We're trying to make everyone hit the same overtone. So we usually don't talk about this because it's very technical.
Yeah.
When we sing overtone chanting, we split the bass note from the overtone. So we basically sing with two voices at the same time.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Yeah. I don't know if we can demonstrate anything like that here, or it's a bit too tricky in this setting.
I could.
Would you be up for it?
Yeah, sure. But I don't know with the microphone if I should go backwards a little bit or yeah, I'll try. Yeah. So again, I studied one version of this, and it's a beautiful thing to teach it. And just before I start, anyone can do this, huh? Because everybody thinks, no, it's crazy. Everyone can do it, at least in my hands.
Okay.
So when I'm singing now, if you're listening, probably you want to look at me for a while because you're curious. But then I actually recommend that you close your eyes and listen, because it is a very inner and inward method. And when we sing or listen to overtone chanting, by default, we enter a meditative state. So it is impossible to listen or sing this without meditating, because it takes the brain into a different brainwave. And people have different experience of this, what it sounds like. Some people say it sounds like small bells. Some people sounds like small sparkles, but those are the overtones. And of course, now I haven't done a warm up, but I'm sitting here. This is a surprise.
Throwing you completely in the deep
But that's
end,
fine.
yeah.
That's fine. I'm gonna try.
Normally
Okay.
we would warm up, right?
No, that's okay. So let's see. I'm gonna try. I'm just. Okay, it's fine.
It's fine. Yeah.
It's fine.
I notice your breath management while you do that. And, it has a similar, you mentioned the didgeridoo. It
Yes.
reminds me of playing a didgeridoo.
Yes.
Not that I've ever done that very successfully.
Yes.
Because they're doing the circular breathing as well. But
Yes.
you had to manage your breath to sustain that tone and keep it very steady and clear and strong all the way through to the end.
Yes.
Which is another aspect of where voice comes from. That was really interesting. Thank you for sharing that.
I mean, it was a small demo, and again, I hadn't warmed up. But did you hear the small little sparkles?
Yes, small little sparkles. So it wasn't really like I'm hearing two distinct notes, let's say, or tones, but you could hear
Those
like a little
little
fuzziness coming into the edge of it.
Exactly.
Yes.
So those are the overtones. And again, it could be clearer if I had warmed up and stuff. But anyway, it's just the sense. So for me, when I learned the overtone chanting technique, it became kind of the ABC. So if I have a group of people and I've done some women's leadership journeys, for example, when I have 3 different sessions, for me, it always starts with this, because as you noticed, when we do overtone chanting, there's no melodies and there's no words and there's no message. It's just the sound itself.
But you are changing your...
I'm modulating.
Yes. And using different spaces within your mouth and changing. Yeah.
There's a lot going on, and it's very slow motion. Everything about overtone chanting in slow motion. So I see it a little bit as if you imagine we would learn how to dance. You would start with really slow motion dancing, almost like Qigong, and then you would learn. And the beauty of starting with this method is that it is so embodied and it's so connected to the breath, as you saw. So when we do this, you really, really anchor the voice and the pure sound. And there's another advantage, and that is, as you know, you're a voice coach. Most people think or feel we can't sing. There's a lot of stigma around the voice and a lot of judgment. And so when we do overtone chanting, it is so completely different than anything we've done, and it sounds so different. And so everybody kind of starting from the same scratch. There's no like, and when you have a group doing this, everybody's going to feel like, I don't know what's coming out of my mouth. This is weird. So everybody's in that together. So yeah, so it has a lot of special qualities. And so to go back to my journey into becoming a voice coach today, this was very intuitive what I did, but I was in my voiceaholic years, as I say, I was on this journey, and after a while I became very fascinated with what the voice as an instrument can do itself, without the stories, without the message, just the voice. And then eventually some people started saying, can you show me how to do this? Can you show me how to? So it was very organic. And actually my first ever workshop was Overtone Chanting.
Interesting.
Yeah. And then, and then of course the drama and the poetry and all of that. So it was a very expressive time.
So how did all of that then lead you into coaching with leaders and executives, and what you do more now is what I understand.
Yes.
I know you're still in all facets, but a lot of what you do now is working with leaders. How did that transition into what you're doing now? Because obviously I have a very similar synergy there. Yeah.
So it was very organic. I started doing some workshop. I started doing some session initially with the voice, with these weird voice techniques, or specific voice techniques, I should say. And then when I was around 30, I shifted into becoming a trainer. So my first degree is dramaturgy and drama. So I'm officially like a drama teacher, like my first. So I started out as a drama teacher. I was teaching creative writing. I was teaching performing, singing. I worked with a lot of teenagers. I love working with teenagers. And then I started working with educations for adults and unions. And so again, like a little bit of a transition happening organically. And I realized that being the doorway to help others express themselves is much more humbling and much more fun than expressing myself. I mean, I had my time with that and I love expressing myself. I know how to do it.
Yeah.
And then as I'm sure you also have in your daily craft, like it's very humbling. Like we are all born with our voice. We learn the words, we have our bodies, and there's so many inhibitions and so many stoppers. And so to be part of that doorway is for me, it's very beautiful. And so after a few years, when working mainly with educations, I realized like I have a real gift for this. And this is so amazing. And I want to be somewhere where it really matters. I want to be where the stakes are high. Because in the context I was, if you do an art project, like it's nice if it goes well, but if it doesn't, it's fine. And I wanted to be a place where like it really matters.
Yep.
And I also wanted to access more people. Again, something like Overtone Chanting, how many people are going to want to do Overtone Chanting?
Okay,
I'm just saying. That's the point of that. And then if you just move into any kind of creative arts, still, unfortunately, the way the world is, it's still perceived as an add-on and a nice to have.
Or a hobby or something that you can do.
It is. And again, my father was a professional musician, so in my home it wasn't like that. But in society, those are the values. And I wanted to be a place where I could access more people and meet anyone and everyone, because I know that all of us need this in our life. And then I transitioned into the corporate world. And then later I took a master's in organization development.
Oh, okay.
So it was very organic, if you will. Yes.
So while we're on the topic of voice then, how do you see that, let's say the singing voice, which we both come from, that background in singing and performing arts, then transitions or connects with leaders and how they need to use their voice?
So like you say, people are not aware. Like, I find it so interesting because by now I've been selling and delivering training for corporates and C-suites for many years. And I find that when I say, well, public speaking, presentation, storytelling, pitching, yes. And I say, nonverbal communication, body language, yes. And then when I say voice, it's like, oh, we don't need that.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I find a lot of people who say, oh, yes, that's something that I really
I'm
feel
so
I
glad.
need.
I'm so glad because I find, they don't say that it's just like, it's a hesitation. We said that at the same time, sister. It's a hesitation because it's so new.
And uncomfortable.
Exactly. And so sensitive. And it's so, and I think most people have no idea what vocal training is. What are the vocal elements? What is the voice? It's such a, and then I say, well, how often do you use your voice? And then I say, how much vocal training have you had? And I said, so it's one of the biggest tools in your personal toolbox.
Absolutely.
It's part of your, it's part of how you relate to people. It's part of how you're perceived. It's part of your brand. And at any meeting, any conference, the voice is the bridge between your message and the audience. Yeah. But I'm so glad to hear that you say that there's more interest. I find there's maybe interest, but like you say, again, there's so much internalized judgment and sensitivity, and it's not easy to go about and get to do a training with it. When I'm there, then it's like, oh, pop, oh, I didn't know, interesting. But it's like to have those conversations not so easy, because it is so I think it's important that you exist and that I exist, and I think there needs to be more of us. Hello.
Yeah, but I feel also when I'm working with clients and you get them into using their voice and playing with their voice, they open something up and they have these aha moments and discoveries, which is fascinating, because most people that I start to work with, they say, I'm not a singer. I can't sing. I don't want to learn to sing. That's not what I'm here for. But I'm here to help you explore what your voice can do. And very often singing exercises, I'm sure you can relate to this, are going to help you to tap into that.
Of course.
Because when we sing, we use a lot more breath. We have to understand where our instrument comes from, breath, vibrations, resonance, and then articulation.
Of course.
And so once they open this up, they become fascinated.
Yes.
Most, not all.
Yes, I mean, there's different ways of leading them in, so to speak. But I mean, singing is the way to practice. So it's like, if you want to have a good body, you need to go to the gym, you need to run. You don't run when you sit in the C-suite meeting. Just the same with your voice. You don't sing an aria or a gypsy song in the meeting, but that's how you practice.
Yeah.
It's just how you practice.
Well, your voice is a muscle, and people don't think about that. You go to the gym to work out any other part of your body.
Exactly.
To look good, to feel good.
Yeah.
But the voice, nobody really thinks about working that out.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. And one of the things that I recommend to my clients is, especially here in Dubai, where we have so many different cultures living together and there's so many different radio stations. So I say, just when you're driving, listen to different vocal techniques and sing along. Listen to the Arabic songs, try to sing along, listen to the Bollywood ones, there's very often some Russian or some Slavic songs. Just copy the sounds for fun when you're alone in the car. And of course, some rock and roll and pop music is good too, because it's just like you say, it's if you haven't played around with it, if it doesn't know what it can do, like how is it going to be yours when you need it to be your ally?
I came to your choir practice just a couple of days ago. You invited me along. Wonderful group of, well, on this occasion it was only women, but I know you also accept men into your group.
Yes.
And for me, it was open. It was exhilarating. It was just a beautiful experience. You used a lot of different music styles, languages, and that was very new for me, because coming from my background of musical theatre, jazz, performing arts, we didn't really tap into those styles. A little bit more into classical, where you're singing in different languages, Italian, French. But what you shared was something very new for me. I'm going to say one of those songs has been playing in my head for the last 2 days. I've been waking up with this melody in my head.
Beautiful. Is it Cuando Veo el Hijo Hermoso?
Yes.
Oh, wow. It's a beautiful Sephardic song. So it's a medieval flamenco song, and it's just so gorgeous.
Yes, it is beautiful.
I'm so glad it landed in your soul.
And I was fascinated at how quickly these women that you're working with were able to pick up the melodies under your guidance. And it comes a lot to you and your expression and how you teach it to them. There's no piano to guide them. It's all a cappella. And they're not professional singers.
No, most of them think they couldn't sing.
There you go. And they were key, and they were emoting and enjoying. And it was a wonderful experience.
Oh, we were so happy to sing with you. It's so wonderful to have you. And so for all Dubaians who are hearing us, please reach out to Lisa or myself, because even if you think you can't sing, just come once. That's what I say. And I always say, like, if you can't sing there, that's my problem. Because as you know, singing is so much impacted by what we think and what we feel. And if we don't feel safe and we have that fear of being judged, it trickles down. And the way most choirs are, it's a little bit more strict. You have some notes, you have an audition, and it's about hitting the right notes. And my way of doing this is completely embodied, very joyous, very groovy. And it's not about hitting the right note. It's about expressing and freeing your expressive power.
And that's what I found so different compared to other choirs that I've experienced, and also growing up in school and the madrigals and a cappella groups. It is a lot more regimented and strict. You do your vocal warm up, yes. And then you lead into the songs, and it's very. You're an alto. You're an alto, mezzo soprano. You're a soprano.
Yes,
as a woman, or a baritone, a bass. And you categorize, which I've never been a fan of. Being categorized. It's so nice
that you resonate with that, because you saw that I say that in my experience, when I grew up, I was a soprano, which as all small girls want to be a soprano, right? And also I started singing in choirs when I was 10, right? So I've done it the whole way. And then when I had my journey through these voice techniques, I realized that I could do so much more. And I've actually sung the tenor in a few choirs. Like, my range goes all the way. Yeah. And I realized that if you go into these practice things with an open mind, anyone has much more range than we think. And I find it very limiting that this is my range. And of course, it's naturally, we all have a natural gravity to this is easy, but I think it's super healthy to try what's not easy sometimes and to stretch a little bit.
And again, that comes back to exercising your voice and understanding your instrument.
Yes.
Because when I started out, I was an alto, more so, up to a mid-soprano, mezzo-soprano. But it's more in recent years, and as I have been discovering my own voice and teaching others working with sopranos, that I've discovered a range that for me used to be very difficult or strained and tense. Yes. Whereas now it's open and it's beautiful, and I love exploring those very, very high notes. Yeah.
Can I hear a little bit about your journey into from being, because you've been you've done things that I would dream of. I have such respect for what you do. I've never done regular musicals or pop songs. I've never tried that. So I have a huge awe for that. Of course, as everyone, we always think the things we haven't tried is just, I think it's so amazing. And you've done that. And then you transitioned from that into becoming a professional voice coach and communication expert. So how was your journey?
So I always wanted to be on the stage. I'd go to musicals and I'd see other performers on the stage, and all I wanted was, I want to be down there. I want to be that person. Yeah. So I was pretty clear on what I wanted to do with my career. And first I traveled the world a bit, got some experience. And then when I came back, I went to performing arts school. And I learned everything from dance, ballet, contemporary dance, and then to voice, which I'd studied pretty much all the way through anyway. Singing was my thing, and piano. I learned piano from the age of 7. So it was very much my thing to sing and play.
Oh, wow.
And that's where I moved into the songwriting. And then later on in my career, after doing the musicals, which I won't say I didn't want to do, and I would love to get back into that. Yeah. But I got opportunities to then travel the world as a singer, songwriter, pianist. And so that was then the direction that I ended up taking, and moved to Europe and spent, I would say, more than half my career now and life outside Australia. Yes. Originally from Australia. Yeah. And in that environment, transitioned into jazz, found I loved jazz, and that became more of my style. And then, well, I became a mom, and once you have other people to look after, your own career and your own things start to, well, pivot. Yes, is probably the word. And I found that I loved to teach it to others, and I found I had a gift to be able to help other people who had blockages in their voices, or were struggling or not able to connect with emotion. Anything to do with singing, this was my main thing, was singing, teaching, to find their voice and explore what they were able to connect in. And then I started to get more and more people coming to me from the corporate world saying, I want to find my voice. That's where I say, I think there are people out there who already have that awareness that their voice is so important. and they would come asking, as a voice coach, can you help me to explore more of my voice? And then I transitioned more and more into helping these people, because I found that also very fulfilling, and being able to tap into that.
Yeah.
So that is now more of what I do. And as you said also, because the creative arts is more of a hobby. And so when you're wanting to make a career out of it, it is more difficult to sustain that than it is with people who it's their bread and butter.
Yes.
Their voice is their career,
of
their
course.
future.
Yeah.
So that's my story.
It's so fascinating, like to say that we have so many, it's same but different.
Yes, exactly.
It's really like that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's so beautiful to
Yeah.
meet my peer who has like, oh, you went that door and I went that door.
So from the acting side of it, once I finished with what I was doing, got an agent, started doing commercials, TV commercials, had a small role in Neighbours, and took that route alongside the singing and nurturing the singing, until the singing then really took over and became my thing.
It's so cool. Yes. And I'm also realizing, and I kind of know this, but I'm also realizing when I'm listening to like all the stuff that I've done in the expressive part, it's been very, very subculture, very fringe. I was always very, when I was a teenager, it was very sort of subculture. So anything that was mainstream was
That's where we're very different.
Yeah, exactly. So you did which I now admire so much, but everything we did was, I was listening to Mari Boine, the Sami singer from Norway. I would listen to German punk, Sankon Up to Luck. Like it was very sort of ethnic and quirky, and same with performing, right? I did Buffon, I did strange Hamlet performances with lots of different elements. Like I did a poetry performance with my own poetry.
Wonderful.
In Swedish. I wrote at the time Swedish and Danish poetry, and I had like a choreographer, a dancer, a celloist, a scenographer, a costume. Like I did a whole freaking show with my own poetry about female desire.
Beautiful.
Under the skin. So, but again, it's very, very, very fringe, so we work with the same tools, but it's just funny to hear but yeah, it's beautiful. Yeah.
You speak many languages.
I speak 6, yeah.
That's incredible. Tell us which languages.
So I grew up in Norway and Sweden. And we moved to Sweden just before I started school. So my first day in school, I sat like this and I didn't understand one word. It was very like, oh. But of course, they're fairly similar. So I learned fast. So then I knew, and then my father was from London, but I grew up in Norway. So he was learning Norwegian. Or speaking Norwegian. So we spoke Norwegian at home.
Okay.
But my parents would speak English when we were not supposed to understand. And then I remember I was 9 years old when we started My Name is Peter with English in school. And I found rhyming poems in English that I wrote when I was 10, 11. So I must have picked it up fast, but probably that kind of thing. And then, so those were my 3 first. And then when I was early 20s, I moved to Berlin because that was the happening time. And so I learned German, obviously. And then I moved to Denmark. So I learned Danish, which is kind of unlearnable I don't know how much you know. So the Scandinavian languages are very similar on the page, right? Like if you see them in writing, very similar. However, vocally, they're placed completely different. Should I do a demo for you?
Sure, please.
This is very interesting. Yeah. So when I do my talks about the voice, I usually do this demo part to just explain that's a big thing about the voice, that most of us, we think of our voice as something that is fixed. That is my voice and the way it is. And I always say that the voice is elastic. And I also talk about how the voice is connected to our persona and our personality.
Yep.
So, and then different languages have different placements in the throat and the mouth. And that impacts the whole sound. Yes. And so, and by the way, I've made all this up myself. But I think I'm right. So English, when I speak, I feel is about here.
It's very frontal.
Yes, it's here, kind of in the middle of the mouth. Yeah. So now if you go to Arabic, Arabic is very guttural. So now Danish is placed just above the Arabic. So Danish is very guttural. And other people who hear it say, other Scandinavians, they say it sounds like porridge. So you will hear now when I speak Danish that my pitch goes down. Så når jeg nu taler dansk, så bliver jeg meget, meget dyb.
Yes, true.
Jeg får en helt anden klang. Yeah. Og det er samme pige, der sidder og snakker, men det bliver meget, meget dybere. So that's my Danish me, right? And then Swedish is actually placed perfectly in the middle. It's above the English. So it's actually very, very easy to intonate, to hit a tone in Swedish. They also have a huge quiet tradition because it's right in the middle. Så om man pratar svenska nu så blir det på ett helt annat sätt. Det
You can
blir
hear it more up here.
mycket ljusare, va? Det blir på ett helt annat sätt och det är en helt annan röst som pratar, även om det är samma tjej som pratar.
Until you go into those bottom notes at the end of your phrases, you're taking it back down again.
Yeah. And then if I speak Norwegian, so Norwegian is placed right behind the T. So my sixth language is Spanish. I lived in Mexico and Spain. And Spanish is placed, it's higher up than the English. And Norwegian is even higher. It's right behind the teeth. So when I hear Norwegians and I'm not thinking in Norwegian, I think it sounds super squeaky, like birds. And many people say that you can't get angry in Norwegian. For jeg snakker norsk, så er det kjempelyst. Det ligger helt oppe for antennene. Så det er liksom, det er veldig, veldig mange lyse klanger. Det lyder på en helt annen måte, selv om jeg sitter og snakker.
So your pitch changes with the language as well.
Yes.
When you're speaking that Norwegian, your pitch actually lifts as well as your resonance.
Yes. And that is, and I think all of us who speak different languages do that. And mi español es aquí, que es muy hacia arriba también, en otra forma.
Wenn ich Deutsch spreche, ich glaube, mein Voice ist ungefähr genauso, wo es ist, wenn ich Englisch spreche.
Na, ich finde, die Deutsch ist ein bisschen tiefer, ne? Hier. Wenn ich so spreche und es geht um dies und geht um das und wie fühlst du dich heute? Ich fühle mich so.
Aber es
How do you
kommt
feel
darauf
today?
an, was du ist dein Gefühl in dem Moment.
Yeah, anyway. This is to be
Sorry, we're
discovered.
speaking.
Yeah, no, but this is so funny. This is so funny. So those are the languages. And of course, sometimes we have strong accents, and that is I think I was fortunate that my first language was Norwegian, so it's an easy language to travel out from.
Interesting.
If you start with Hindi or you start with French or, it can be more difficult, but you always have individuals from those language speakers who don't have accent as well. And I always say it's about learning muscles. Sounds are muscles, right? So when I was learning each of these languages, I had to practice muscles. And most language teachers don't teach you how to use sounds.
So I focus a lot also on tuning our ears because it's how we hear things that's how we're able to emulate it and repeat it. And we actually learn to speak by mimicking what we hear, we mimic it. So if you hear a sound growing up and your parents have a certain distinct tone in their voice, you're likely going to emulate that.
Yes.
And that's not always a positive because if your parents, your teachers have a sound which is not contributing to their ability to communicate well, then the chances are you may pick that up. And so somebody might be very soft-spoken when they're speaking. And so you will pick that up and then you sound weak.
Yes.
And that also, as you said, it connects with your personality.
Yes.
Which is so interesting.
So it's very and different. We have the languages that are placed differently, and then you have the cultural codes, and then you have the gender card. And there's so many layers as of how do I express myself? What is allowed? What is expected? What is good? What is not good? And what is rewarded? And so, for example, if you have a group of people where there's an alpha male on top who wants to really be alpha, and he wants to work with younger women who are very sweet and very coquette and very like that, then of course, then this is going to be rewarded, right? And so I think we also, and also for men, like, how am I supposed to speak? And I find it so funny, the commercials, the male voice, Gillette, the best the man can get. So in the commercials, they exaggerate the masculinity of the voice. And of course, not all the men speak like that, right? And so it's so many layers and so many parts that are connected to our core. And just like you say, the voice can do anything. There's well, not anything, but there's so many things we can do, and so many muscle journeys and sound journeys and this and that. Do you know Meredith Monk? No, she's one of my voice gurus. You need to check her out. Okay. So she was one of the avant-garde performance artists in New York in the 70s. And she's created a whole there's vocal schools for her way of singing. So she's done lots of operas and lots of records, but she only sings with non-vibrato voice. She does not go into falsetto. And she has a special vocal ensemble. I mean, she's a legend. Amazing. I've had the pleasure of seeing her in person, and it's like, and she, one of her quotes is like, a whole human life is contained in the voice. You know, like there's space for so much more.
Yeah.
And so just like you say with your clients, playing around with it, giving it space, figuring out the ranges, stretching it, just like you go to the gym or you lie on the beach or you do different things with your body. What are you doing with your voice? Are you
Yes.
letting it out?
That's one of the things I noticed with you, and even talking here now, but also in the choir practice, you're very, and you use exercises as well to free up the body as well as the voice. You're very fluid in how you use your body together with your voice. And I heard you saying you've got an amazing voice.
Oh, thank you. Like, oh. Thank
And
you.
while we're on this topic,
Yes.
then let's talk about your book,
Yes.
The Right Kind of Loud. If you can see it here.
Hello, everybody.
There we go.
Right kind of loud, right kind of loud. Good. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, tell us about the concept behind the book and why you wrote it.
It's so funny because I've been teaching creative writing and studied writing. So, you know, and I love writing. And throughout my career, so many times people said, Kim, you need to write a book. And I had this idea. I think many of us had this idea. Well, I don't know enough to write a book. Like this kind of like, well, I'm not an expert. And so the idea came, I was sitting in the car with my friend. We were driving from Bab al Shams to Motor City. And I still remember the moment. And I said, oh, maybe if I can connect the different skills that I train people in, maybe I know enough. And then it flooded. It was very fast, actually. I wrote this in 3 months.
Okay.
So it was very I called it like a download book. So each chapter in the book is a toolbox. So it's about getting the right kind of loud. So sound right is about the voice. Move right is about the body, you know, gut, brain, high status, low status. Listen right, active listening. Speak right, you know. I could have written a little bit more about that, but I wanted there to be balance between the tools. And then it's tell it right, which is about how to connect with your writing voice. I kind of do with the writing voice as I do with the spoken voice, if you will. Yeah. And then there's one chapter which is a kind of a mixed bag with different tools that come up when I work with individual, a little bit about networking, handling nerves and stuff. And then the last chapter, which is called Connect Right, is a little touchdown about how to connect and work in different work cultures, because I've had the pleasure of working in different cultures. So the first one is the Nordic culture with Copenhagen, and then the Mediterranean culture with Barcelona, American with San Francisco, and the last one, the Middle Eastern with Dubai.
And how do you find they all differ in, I guess, the way they approach leadership, business, speaking, confidence?
It's just like you and I, it's same and different. Right? So you have a part that is universal.
Yes.
And then you have so many differences. Down to what you talk about. You know, I usually say that, you know, I remember when I went to parties in Berlin, you talked about politics, you talked about projects that you've done, and you talked about travels. And if you talked about travels, you just went through the itinerary and how to plan it. It's
very regimented.
Yeah. And it was very good to disagree. You were supposed to have an opinion, right?
Yes.
So if you go to a party in Sweden, I'm just giving you some samples because this is kind of fun, right? Yeah. So Sweden is a very controlled society. Everyone is trevlig. Everyone's nice. You never raise your voice in Sweden. You're never angry. If you raise your voice, you're crazy or drunk.
And this all comes through your upbringing as well.
Yeah. This is cultural code. Yes. Yeah. So nobody raises their voice. Nobody says anything bad. And then when you leave, then they will say, "Oh my God, Lisa, what's this?" But they will never say. They will never say it in your face. So then at a Swedish party, everyone is very trevlig, very nice, until they get drunk, and then they unzip, and then you get all the anxiety and all the childhood traumas. It's the country of Ingmar Bergman.
Yes. Right.
We have Strindberg, we have Ingmar Bergman, we have the anxiety, and you know, so there at a Swedish party, you would talk about traumas, deep traumas, and those in Berlin, people will never even be aware of those traumas. And then, of course, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah, so it's just some examples. So same and different. So I'm not, by the way, I'm not an expert in cultural codes, but again, because I lived and worked in 10 countries, and I say worked like when I was on the ground working. So then you soak up a lot. So it's always about to have your right kind of louder to get your impact. It's always about expanding your comfort zone, being in your own skin, accessing your voice, accessing your body, accessing your words. That's universal. But then how you do it and what you talk about and in which way. And just for example, different languages have different space between the words and different rules around when you and I talk, how much space is there between one speaker and the other. So I had a friend from New York when I lived in San Francisco, David, bless your soul. And he always interrupts, always. And I would get so furious. It's like, David, I was telling something. And he's like, what do you mean I'm a New Yorker? And so in New York, that's how so for him, that was showing that he was engaged.
Yes.
Okay. So that's how to show how you're engaged. And in San Francisco Bay Area where I lived, it's California, it's very low key, it's very soft. You will not necessarily, you will speak fast, you will be right there, but you will not interrupt. And so there's so many nuances of all of this. And it's not about mapping out all of it, because organically we usually know our contexts unless we are new, and then we learn them, and we learn them by making mistakes because they're usually implicit.
Yes.
But yes, there's a whole wave of all that fine tuning, and then you have the power structure. You have the access to power structure, which is white privilege, patriarchy, certain nationalities are better than others, native English speakers, so it's so
Which
rich.
is condensed here where we are in Dubai.
Of course. Yes.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's very rich. I don't know exactly what I'm.
So,
but
for
am I answering what you? Yeah.
So, for example, somebody who is living in and working in San Francisco, they're dealing mostly with people who are from that region, so they all have a similar communication style. They get it.
I would just like to say there's tons of other nationalities in California. The difference between there and here, for example, is that everybody assimilates very strongly. So there's a huge Indian population, huge Asian population. Most Japanese people, I think, they've had a huge Japanese population. So it's and lots of Iranians are there. Like, it's very, very multicultural. But everybody learns how to speak American, and that's very mainstream.
Got it.
Assimilation is stronger.
Yeah. But I think this is where the world is going as well. As we are able to spread out, and even more so since COVID, everybody is shifting. We're not necessarily fixed in one geographical location. And if I think about Australia, which is incredibly multicultural now,
I can imagine.
It's a sea of all different cultures coming in. Yeah. And I see that now more and more. But obviously here in Dubai, we are immersed in that.
Which I think is one of the biggest gifts with living. And I love that about being here.
And having children raised here as well. They become very open to all different cultures, that they would not have that self-awareness, openness, like understanding if they'd grown up somewhere else.
Here, everyone is a third culture kid. Yes.
If somebody wants to read your book, I definitely haven't had the chance yet, but I'm looking forward to. Where can we access it?
It's on Amazon.
Amazon, okay.
Yes, and if something is strange with Amazon, get in touch with me.
So we're going to put all of the links into the show notes.
And I have a website
everything.
and LinkedIn and all of that.
Okay,
yes.
Leading from this, you also did a TEDx talk on similar or same topic.
Yes.
I was watching that this morning, and one of the things that I was, I guess, I found very interesting is that you talk about how voice is a vibration and that your voice comes out as sound waves and vibrations, which then connect into your body.
Yes.
My body. As you're speaking, I'm feeling those vibrations and vice versa.
Yes.
And people don't think that way, but how so close that is. How you said it's closer than a physical touch.
Yes,
it's intimate is the word.
It's more intimate than skin to skin. And it's also the fact that, we can close our eyes. We cannot close our ears. So if I hear a scream of pain, I feel that pain immediately. And if I hear a beautiful voice with, I call it sound flowers, like I said in the choir, when we have the harmonies, and when the sound flowers open, it's like an inner shower of healing, right? So because I came up, I just thought about why we are so impacted by the voice, and also why it's so sensitive. Right. And so if I now create the voice in my stomach and it depending on language and muscles.
Yes.
I do different things with it. And then we know it becomes sound waves and it enters into your ear canals and to all of you listening, all your ear canals. And those ear vibrations translate into vibration. And that is.
Yes.
And it was funny because I was talking about this and then I read this novel about a woman who was deaf. And it was a really good novel, And then she goes dancing to the discotheque. And I thought, why would she go to the discotheque? And she places herself in front of the loudspeakers to just feel the vibrations.
Vibration, yeah.
So
the
it is
rhythms.
so sound is vibration. And I think, any instrument can touch us, but the human voice can do something that no other instrument can.
I've experienced how deaf people who cannot hear are able to still sing in tune because they're feeling the space of where the voice sits and the vibrations.
Yes.
So the vibrations coming through the feet and up through the body, but then also understanding where you feel the vibrations as you the way they sit. Which is fascinating, I find.
I want to tell the story about Wolfson. I can't remember his first name. The man who's the guy who came before the Roy Hart. Have you heard about the Roy Hart method?
No, I haven't.
Okay. Oh, God.
It's so much to learn from you.
It's like, because you've done all the classical stuff that I haven't touched. So Roy Hart is also a big vocal school. It's like an institute. Lots of people have studied there. It's in France. And Roy Hart studied with Wolfson. I can't remember the first name. So he's one of the fathers of modern voice work, if you will. And he was in the First World War. And he was lying in the trenches. It's called, you call it trenches?
Yes, yeah.
Trenches. And he heard all these sounds of soldiers screaming out in pain, and he was traumatized. Again, we cannot separate from this. And he kept hearing these sounds. It just stayed in his. It was very traumatized. And then he tried to go to different doctors and this and that, and there was no healing. And then after a while, he started experimenting with expressing what he was inside with all those sounds, and that became a whole new school of voice, if you will.
Wow.
And that then led to the Roy Hart. And so I haven't studied with him directly, but I met a lot of people who studied with him, and I do very related kind of work. And I studied with Ida Kellerova, who comes from the Gypsy tradition. She's not a Roy Harter, but it's very relatable. And that story about, like all these sounds that were then layered in, and it makes sense.
Yeah, it does make sense.
So it is that, and also, how when we know someone, we can pick up the phone and they can say, "Hi, honey, what's wrong?" Like the voice is like a DNA of our emotional state, and it's always revealing to others how we feel. That's why you and I are in business, because for anyone who wants to have an influence, if the voice is not embodied, if they don't have a good voice, we're going to hear it. Yeah. But then also when we are in a relationship with someone, how the voice is that little, like, we hear exactly what's going on, right?
Or, what's going on, or if you're disinterested in the conversation, you don't want to be there.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, hi, yeah, right. And you don't realize how you're coming across or you're being perceived.
Yes.
I know my brother, every time he speaks with my mom says, "Hi, Jeffrey, how are you?" I should not say this on camera. Yeah, I'm fine. Everything's all right. And that just gives a sense of, well, why did I even bother calling you? Or, and I'm sure he doesn't realize that he gives off that.
Probably not intentional.
Not intentional, exactly. But then my mother takes it as being personal. And I think this is just an example of how this is through society, through life. But if you understand how you use your voice, let's say if my voice is going down, then I'm going to be perceived in a certain way that I'm either disinterested, or I don't want to be, or I'm really sad, or I've had a bad day, my voice is going into a vocal fry. People don't understand how that comes across to somebody else. And this is where we come in as well.
Yes, we come in.
To voice, open up those perceptions and give the tools that you can speak in a way that every time you speak with a certain intention.
Yes. And also I find that, what is beautiful about having some voice work is that I call the voice becomes your ally. It's something you can trust. You know, I have a lot of people that I work with throughout the years that, you know, they say, well, I prepared for everything. I got the right suit. You know, I did the outline. I have the introduction. I have the conclusion. I have everything in place. But then I know that when the moment comes, maybe my voice is going to break, which is a normal part of the journey of the nerves and the butterflies. That's all normal. But at the same time, for me, the voice is like an ally. So it's like whatever happens, I can trust my voice. And that's kind of like, it's really like, you know, I can hang on to it. Like what I might feel crazy. I can have tons of crazy voices inside. I can be very upset. But because it's a practice part that I've trained, I can kind of hang on to it. It works.
Yes.
And that's just, it increases my comfort zone a lot in the world. It helps me. I think it's helped me navigate and have the kind of career I have and move to new countries and be very independent and very brave, if you will, because it's one of the tools that's just there that I can speak for myself.
Yes.
I can speak up. I can express my needs. I can draw my boundaries.
The importance
not
of
not always, but
Kim, oh my gosh, there's so many topics that I still want to cover with you. So I think this is part one.
Oh, bless you. Yes, let's have part two.
We need a part two.
And you know what we need to have? Like, you know, the Ghostbusters, we need to be like the voice angels or something. We should do like something, the voice, I don't have the right word, but Ghostbusters, like voiced boosters or something. Because with you, you're my peer.
Yeah, I love it. You know what? A lot of people would say, oh, you know, you're my competition. We should not get together because we might have the same kinds of clients. That's
I think that's very limiting. And I was so touched.
Yes.
So everybody, I was at the Sharjah Entrepreneurship Festival and I was giving a talk about the voice. I was giving a voice workshop. And Lisa comes up to me and says, I do something different. We should talk. I want to have you on my podcast. I thought, wow. And then I thought, I'm going to invite you to the choir. And then I thought, no, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe, you know. And then I thought, why not?
Yeah.
It's my space of joy.
Yes.
And I wanted to share the joy with you.
And I'm so glad you did. And I'm so grateful. Thank you so much.
And everybody else.
I got so much from that.
Beautiful.
And so if anybody wants to come and join the
please.
choir with Kim, then I highly recommend it.
Yes.
And we will put links to how we can get in touch with you into the show notes of this podcast episode. Otherwise, just reach out to me on my socials or you on your socials. We'll also put your social handles
and we'll put all the how to get in touch with us and stuff.
So you're mostly on LinkedIn.
I'm mostly on LinkedIn.
Your favorite,
that's my platform. Yes.
And it's Kim A. Page.
Thank you.
What does the A stand for?
Annette.
Kim
That's
Annette beautiful.
Page. Yes.
Kim Annette Page.
Yes.
So Kim A. Page. That's what you got to look for. Look for the Kim with the A in the middle, and you'll come across you.
Yes.
It has been such a wonderful conversation and liberating and different. So you know, opening up the ears mostly of our listeners who will be listening to this, but also those who have observed will get something amazing to watch you.
Fantastic.
In action.
Thank you.
And we'll get you back for part two for
Yay!
sure.
I feel like was it Brené Brown at the first Oprah? She was interviewed by Oprah. And then Oprah said, we're going to have part two. So I'm like, this is my...
We need part two.
This is a part two moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Impact Through Voice podcast. Now, if you've reached the end of this episode, then it means you're enjoying the podcast. So I have a quick favor to ask. If you haven't yet subscribed, please go and do it now and even leave us a review, because it really does help us so much to reach more people and impact more people. And I would be very, very grateful. Now, I love to read all of your comments about the show and what you're enjoying, what you would like to hear more of. So please take the time and go and do that now. When you do that, please take a screenshot and then tag me on Facebook or Instagram. That's Lisa Hugo Official. Now, I'm going to be sure to share your post, and I'm also going to private DM you with a thank you. And it also means you won't miss an episode. And as a subscriber, then you're going to get access to more content that we don't even open up to everybody. So thanks again. And until next time, keep on working towards your goals and making a positive impact on the world with your voice.